The galaxy believes it is being invaded. That belief is comforting. Invasion implies intent. Conquest implies victory or defeat. Even extinction implies a conclusion that can be understood. But what if none of that is true? What if the Tyranids are not here to conquer, not here to devour, and not even here to destroy the galaxy? What if they are here because the galaxy has already been found, not by them, but by something else? Every species that studies the Tyranids reaches the same conclusion. They consume biomass, strip worlds to bare stone, and abandon them forever. No monuments, no occupation, no empire. Oceans gone. Atmospheres peeled away. Microbial life erased down to the molecular level. That is not conquest. That is sterilization. If the Tyranids wished to rule the Milky Way, they would preserve infrastructure. If they wished to feed endlessly, they would farm. Instead, they erase everything and move on, leaving behind silent stars and dead worlds drifting without purpose. The Imperium calls them monsters. Chaos calls them rivals. The Necrons call them vermin. Even the Eldar, with memories older than gods, only see a devouring swarm. None of them ask the forbidden question, why now? The Tyranids did not arrive gradually. They did not evolve alongside the galaxy. They appeared suddenly, already complete, already perfected, already operating on scales beyond comprehension. Hive Fleets, emerging from intergalactic darkness, not from a single direction, but from many. When their trajectories are overlaid, they do not form a spear aimed at the galactic core. They form arcs, curves, encirclements. The galaxy is not being invaded from outside. It is being wrapped. Consider the shadow in the warp. It is treated as a weapon, a suppression field, a side effect. But its behavior is too precise. It collapses astropathic communication. It blinds warp navigation. It isolates entire regions of space from external psychic contact, and it is strongest near the galactic edge. This is not battlefield interference. This is signal masking, as if something beyond the galaxy hunts not by sight or sound, but by psychic resonance. As if the Milky Way saturated with psychers, gods, faith, and emotion has been broadcasting its presence into the void for millennia. The Tyranids do not worship the warp. They do not draw power from it. They do not bargain with it. They suppress it. They smother it. Where they pass, the warp grows quiet. This is not incidental. If the Tyranids were merely hungry, they would harvest psychic life carefully. Instead, they annihilate it with urgency. Entire civilizations consumed without optimization. Billions of organisms expended without hesitation. Because speed matters more than efficiency. Because something is coming. Beyond the spaces between galaxies exists a predator older than chaos, older than the old ones, perhaps older than the warp itself. Something that does not conquer worlds, but detects concentrations of thought. Something that feeds not on flesh, but on awareness, on layered consciousness, on galaxies rich with emotion and belief. To such a thing, the Milky Way is not a battlefield. It is a beacon. The Tyranids did not discover us. They heard the same signal, and they understood it. Every Tyranid adaptation points toward acceleration, toward mass deployment over perfection. Hive fleets accept catastrophic losses without pause. They do not consolidate. They do not slow. They evolve just enough to keep moving. They are racing a clock, and the clock is cosmic. If the galaxy can be stripped of life, of thought, of psychic presence, then the signal fades. If worlds become dead, silent stone orbiting mute stars, the beacon dims, chaos starves, the warp calms, and the predator may pass us by. This is why the Tyranids do not negotiate, why they cannot be redirected. why coexistence is impossible. From their perspective, the galaxy is already terminal. They are choosing how it dies, quietly or screaming. And yet, this is not the deepest horror, because responses imply design. The Tyranids behave less like a species and more like a system, not a civilization, but a failsafe. A function that activates when thresholds are crossed: psychic density, warp instability, the spontaneous birth of gods. The Milky Way crossed those thresholds long ago. The old ones shaped reality, seeded life, and treated the warp as a tool. In doing so, they may have created a signal they could not silence, not chaos alone, but something drawn to complexity itself. When they realized their error, they did not build a weapon. They built an ending, a biological solution, immune to corruption, immune to possession, immune to temptation, a life form with no individuality, no ambition, no emotional spikes for the warp to feed upon. The hive mind is not a god. It is the absence of gods. That is why chaos falters near it, not from fear, but incompatibility. Faith has nothing to anchor to. Daemons weaken. Rituals fail. The warp finds nothing reflected back. The Tyranids adapt to everything except imagination. They do not create futures. They erase them, and they cannot stop. Even the destruction of entire hive fleets does not alter the pattern. New ones arrive, from new angles, with new biology, as if they were seeded across the void long ago, waiting for activation. That signal may not have been humanity. It may have been the moment the warp became self-aware, the moment gods were born. Now consider the final possibility. What if the Tyranids are not the galaxy's immune system, but its white flag? What if some ancient intelligence calculated that the predator beyond the void cannot be defeated, only delayed, and the Tyranids are here not to save the Milky Way, but to buy time for something else to escape? If so, they are not villains. They are executioners, following orders older than reality. When they are finished here, when the galaxy is stripped, silenced, and dark, they will not rest. They will move on. And somewhere in the deep void, there may be entire regions of space that are quiet, not because life never arose there, but because the Tyranids already passed through, and the predator followed, found nothing, and moved on. The greatest lie of the 41st millennium is not that there is only war. It is that war still matters. Because the final enemy does not fight, it feeds. And the Tyranids are simply trying to make sure the galaxy is no longer on the menu. And if that is true, then the most terrifying question is no longer what the Tyranids are doing, but why they are evolving now. Recent encounters do not show refinement. They show distortion. Bioforms grown not for efficiency, but for volume. Hive fleets behaving erratically, colliding, overlapping, consuming each other's resources without clear optimization. Tendrils splitting where they should converge. Adaptations appearing briefly and vanishing, as if discarded mid-thought. This does not look like confidence. It looks like improvisation, as if the original design parameters are no longer sufficient, as if the thing the Tyranids were meant to starve has begun to notice anyway. The shadow in the warp has grown thicker, heavier, more absolute. In some regions, psychers report not silence, but pressure, the sensation of something pressing back through the void, testing the edges of the blockade. A response. If the Tyranids were meant to extinguish the galaxy's signal completely, then partial failure may be worse than total collapse. A dimming beacon does not disappear. It flickers, and flickering lights attract attention. What if the Tyranids are no longer sure they can finish in time? What if the increase in aggression, the reckless biomass expenditure, the sheer brutality of recent hive fleets is not escalation, but desperation? Imagine a failsafe that realizes it has been triggered too late. Imagine a biological intelligence engineered to erase a galaxy, now confronting the possibility that even total consumption will no longer be enough. That silence itself may no longer guarantee safety. If the predator beyond the void feeds on complexity, then even the Tyranids, vast, interconnected, galaxy-spanning, may themselves become nourishment. Perhaps that is why they have never turned back. Perhaps that is why retreat is impossible. Perhaps the hive mind understands that if it pauses, if it slows, if it consolidates, it will be seen. And once seen, there is no running. In that light, the Tyranids are no longer executioners. They are a closing gate, slamming shut against something already pushing through. And the most horrifying thought of all is this. What if the Tyranids lose? Not defeated by the Imperium, not banished by chaos, not undone by some ancient weapon or forgotten god, but simply outpaced. If that happens, the galaxy will not end in fire or war or apocalypse. There will be no final battle, only a sudden, universal absence of thought, a moment where every mind goes quiet at once. And the Tyranids, the great devourer, the end of all things, will be remembered, briefly, not as monsters, but as the last warning anyone ever ignored.